Good afternoon, everyone. It's a Tuesday afternoon. It's actually election day that I'm recording this episode. And welcome to another edition of Kicking a Classic with JCD. As always, I am your host, John JCD DiMaselli. You can check me out on Twitter at NYC1219. You can check out the show on Twitter at KITCWJCD. You could check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Kicking a Classic with JCD. And you can email the show, kickingaclassicwithjcd@yahoo.com. As always, you can check out PWP Nation, who's our home. Check out pwpnation.com. Lots of great articles, interviews, news, content, and so much more. Follow PWP Nation on Twitter at PWP Nation. And check out facebook.com/PWP Nation. You could also check out PWP Nation's newest contributor, Ashley Rose Nova, at ARoseCPE on Twitter. She's part of PWP Nation as well as some other sites, but check her out on Twitter for all her content. And of course, check out the Aletto Show every week as part of PWP Nation on Patreon. So for this week's episode, I decided to take a look at NewBloodRising2000, and I gotta tell you guys, I remember watching this show live, and it wasn't as bad of a chore then as it is now 20 years later to go back and watch the show. My God, WCW just could not get out of their own way. It was horrible. Let's get to the basics. The show was held August 13, 2000 at the Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver, British Columbia, with an attendance of 6,614, which is a disaster. As far as the card and the results, you had 3 count with Colonel Tank Abbott, one of my favorite gimmicks of all time. They defeated the Young Dragons in a ladder match for 3 count gold record, because of course, why wouldn't everybody 3 count be a gold record? It should have been platinum. In the first of many WCW random matches, Ernest Miller defeated the Great Muta in a match that I don't even have it in me to begin to tell you the story. Buff Bagwell defeated Cannon in a Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. That's right, Positively Canyon, one of the greatest gimmicks of all time, kidnapped Judy Bagwell and kept parading her around on a forklift because Judy Bagwell was a fat old lady. And they had to have a match for her rights. The match is most notably known for, besides the bad gimmick, the return of former WCW champ David Arquette to try to help Canyon. Of course, that backfired. But Buff Bagwell would retain his mother. I can't believe I'm saying that. In the first of 2 WCW tag team matches, one announced, one not announced, the champions at this time, Chronic, defeated The Perfect Event, which was Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Haire, Mark Jindrak, and MIA of General Erection and Corporate Occasion. And for some reason, the Filthy Animals were all around ringside as guest referees. Disco Inferno was the actual guest referee in the match, and then Conan, Rey Mysterio, Juventud Guerrero, and Tigress were enforcers around the ringside. No idea. In a strap match, Billy Kidman defeats Shane Douglas. In a mud wrestling rip-off-the-clothes match, Major Guns defeats Miss Hancock, who was Stacy Keibler, when it was revealed, at least at the time, that Stacy Keibler was pregnant. And it was actually the first time that the actual behind-the-scenes romance between Keibler and David Flair was acknowledged on TV. Flair came out to help Keibler, because again, WCW was all about these work shoots, and we'll get to the bigger one later. Another match which barely took 52 seconds, Sting defeated the Demon. The Demon was part of that Dark Circus with Vampiro and the Great Muta. They were really trying to tease some dissension here, and they did just that. In what is one of WCW's better matches and moments, Lance Storm defends the WCW United States Championship against Mike Awesome in what would be described as a Canadian rules match, and Storm had teased for weeks building up to the match that there was going to be a special guest referee who was a multi-time champion and Canadian hero. Well, those Canucks pretty much live for Bret Hart. And you would think common sense would say, okay, Hart's going to be here. Hart hadn't been around the company since the disaster that was WCW Sold Out 2000 back in January. So maybe it was time for Hart to come back. Instead, they got Jacques Rougeau. And before anybody even thinks about grunting and groaning about this, Jacques Rougeau pulls off this role as like the Canadian rules overseer, complete with a miniature Canadian rules handbook to perfection. I really don't think anybody else, including Bret Hart, could have pulled this off as good as Rougeau did. There were multiple times in the match that Awesome had beat Storm, but Rougeau would pull this rule book out and be like, no, Awesome would pin Storm and Storm was out, and Rougeau would be like, no, Storm has to answer a 20 count. If he doesn't answer that, then Awesome wins. There were a few other things, too, where, Rougeau would pull these crazy rules off. And then finally, Rougeau would help Storm win. And as they're celebrating, Bret Hart's music does hit, and everybody loses their shit. And when everybody thinks that Hart may be coming down there to, take out Rougeau and Storm, Hart actually raises Storm's hand, puts Storm over, and leaves and gives Storm probably one of the better rubs ever given in WCW. It really was a rare time where some of the older established WCW talent did something for somebody else, and Hart did for Storm, to be perfectly fair. Next up, I have no idea still to this day why, Chronic, who defended their tag titles earlier in the night successfully in a Four Corners match, which set up the Filthy Animals getting the tag title shot the next night, for some reason took on the Dark Carnival of the Great Muta and Vampiro, and all of a sudden, the Dark Carnival wins the tag titles from Chronic, completely out of left field, completely unexpected, which of course was total WCW at the time. The title change made no sense. It was just like, huh? But then again, a lot of WCW at the time was just that. So next up, we have our co-main event. A no-holds-barred triple threat number one contenders match between Kevin Nash, Goldberg, and Scott Steiner. So here's the backstory. WCW, in their infinite wisdom, tried to turn Goldberg heel, going after Kevin Nash, which, given the history between Nash and Goldberg, okay, Nash was a face. Why would Goldberg automatically side with him just because he's a face? That kind of makes sense. That happens at the Great American Bash in June. Goldberg turns on Kevin Nash, and their feud is set up. Then Goldberg's facing Kevin Nash at Bash at the Beach, with the caveat being that Scott Hall's WCW contract was on the line. If Nash had beaten Goldberg, Hall would be reinstated to WCW. If Goldberg had defeated Nash, Hall was done with the company. In all reality, Hall was already done with the company, but they were bringing some real-life drama into the Goldberg-Nash feud. Okay, makes sense. There's a lot of history between the three guys. This adds up. As a little bit of a stretch as it is, 2 + 2 in its own way does equal 4. Scott Steiner had been Nash's buddy and partner, especially in the New Blood angle. So Hall is supposed to, I'm sorry, not Scott Hall. Steiner is supposed to be Nash's, eyes and ears, whatever, to avoid the New Blood from interfering. Well, we go to the match at Bash at the Beach. Steiner turns on Nash because Nash was more focused on Scott Hall, and Steiner felt left out. Okay, no problem. You've got 2 working feuds for Nash and Goldberg, Nash and Steiner. So obviously it would make sense to bring them all to a head at Fall Brawl, not Fall Brawl, at New Blood Rising for the triple threat. Okay, add the caveat of number one contendership on the line, and it wasn't a case of Steiner and Goldberg, who had no love lost between each other, both storyline-wise and behind the scenes, it would make sense that they'd be in a match with Nash, but they wouldn't just automatically team up together. Okay, we're semi-making sense. The match goes on, and I mean, it's just three guys hitting each other. It was never meant to be a technical masterpiece. I didn't notice it at the time, but going back and rewatching the show, especially for the research for the show, I kept noticing Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson kept using the term going over. Who's going to go over? Who would go over between Nash and Goldberg legitly one-on-one? They kept using that term, and they, that's one thing WCW was known for, was trying to be very insider-ish. Well, I'd say we're probably about 3/4 of the match in, and Kevin Nash is in control, drops the straps to go for the jackknife powerbomb like Nash has done a million times prior, and then this happens.
Forces his way out. What happened there? He pushed him off out of that jump. Is Goldberg leaving? Oh, boy. He said he was going to be the fourth man in. He said, what do you want to do? What are you going to do? Goldberg just walked right past Vince Russo. Vince told him to get back. Russo said, get your, back into the ring. And Goldberg said, Goldberg's walking. Where's Goldberg going? We know he's injured. Well, where is he going? And why is he going there? He walked out of the jackknife powerbomb, which would have been it. Hey, maybe Goldberg was supposed to do something that would have made him look good, but this doesn't make him look real good either, does it? Let's call it what it is.
So the audio, I'm sure, won't tell the whole story, but Kevin Nash was about to hit Goldberg with the jackknife powerbomb. Goldberg pushes him off, walks out of the ring. Vince Russo comes out. Goldberg tells Russo to fuck off and leaves. And then Russo gives a nod to Nash and Steiner like, okay, you two finish the match. And Tony Schiavone, Mark Madden, and Scott Hudson are completely selling it like this part to a script. Listen to more of their commentary.
He swerved Kevin Nash right there, and Vince tried to talk him back into it, and he said no. Well, did you see the facial reaction of Nash? Obviously, he didn't expect it to happen at all. That's what we've got here. Hey, Nash was a pro. Nash was a pro. Nash was a pro. Nash could have punched Goldberg out right there if he would have wanted. Nothing to do with it.
So again, if you can't make it out, they're talking about, maybe something was supposed to happen there. Well, at least Kevin Nash is being a pro, and so on. They've basically lifted the fourth wall in the curtain behind everything. They, basically admitted that it's all a work, and there's nothing else really WCW could do at that point. Nash faces off with Steiner to finish up the match. Nash pins Steiner to win the match. But of course, the big thing is about Goldberg. And heck, for the following month at Fall Brawl, Goldberg Steiner is announced. And wait till you hear what the ad is for that match. Let's pull that up and wait till you hear this.
A new blood rising, WCW's biggest star did the unimaginable. He refused to follow the script. Now, if Vince Russo can't fire Goldberg, he'll have Scott Steiner destroyed. At Fall Brawl, two monsters go fist to fist with no script and one rule. Two enter, one leaves. You cannot imagine what will happen until you see it live.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, WCW just completely exposed the business here. I mean, you could say what you will about stuff Vince has done, stuff TNA has done in the past, even, some of the things AEW has done and allowed to have happen, with the business. But I feel like nothing will ever top this WCW run in, the late summer, early fall of 2000 of completely exposing the business as a complete work. The other match on the show, the main event, Booker T retained his title against Jeff Jarrett. Everything else in this show, the good, the bad, the indifferent, is completely overshadowed, though, by the Nash Goldberg Russo incident. And it was an attempt to get buzz on the company. It did for maybe like 5 minutes, but then once Nitro happened and, Goldberg Steiner was advertised and it had the promo ready, it just became clear what it was. I mean, to be fair, there were rumblings that Goldberg was unhappy in the company. He was unhappy with the direction. But again, just like we talked about in our Sold Out episode, Vince Russo at the time, this is not hindsight 20 years later, Vince Russo. To be fair, Vince Russo WCW used to have on their show a show called WCW Live. It was an internet audio show. You got to remember, this is 99, 2000. Technology wasn't what it was on the internet. And Russo always said his end game was to build the company around Goldberg. So this mentality that Russo never did right by Goldberg was not always an issue personally. It was more of an issue of, again, impatience maybe, not willing to wait for the payoff. Sound familiar, IWC fans? Yeah, even 20 years ago, you pricks were impatient and couldn't let things play out. So again, that's WCW New Blood Rising in a nutshell. It was an interesting time to definitely be part of, WCW and what they had going on. And they just couldn't get out of their own way. Vince Russo was so desperately trying to recreate the Attitude Era, and he was trying to create this new reality era, and it wasn't the time, and WCW wasn't the company for it. So again, on behalf of myself, since I am the only one here at Kicking It Classic with JCD, I want to say thank you for listening. Next week, we have a very interesting episode. It's entitled Lex Luger, WWE Champion. So again, I am your host, John JCD DeMaselli. Thanks for listening.